Okay, today we're going to go over basic workflow for getting your model out of Rhino and into hubs. I'm going to break this video up into two parts. The first is just about what you need in preparation. And in the second part, I'll walk you through it. So in Rhino here, I set up a basic scene. It's a little bit different than what I made for the previous tutorial, but I thought it might make a better little hub space. So you need that, and if I type units, you can see I like to work and have the base model unit set to inches, and I like to work in feet and inches. That's how it's set up. We're going to have to convert that later. I'll talk about that. You should download Blender. Blender is a free open source 3D modeling program. The only thing we're going to use it for is that the file format that Hubs requires, you can't export directly out of Rhino. So we're going to export one file out of Rhino, open it in Blender, but then export it as something else. That's all we're going to use it for, I promise. But you can download it, it's free. I'll walk you through it. If you go to hubs.mozilla.com, set up an account, it allows you to kind of work in hub spaces and make things persistent, but you'll also need one to work in Spoke. And Spoke is basically just the development environment for hubs spaces. It's super simple. I'll walk you through it. It's also free, but set up a login. So I'm going to go back to my model here, and I'm just going to get it set up so that it's ready to import. The first thing I'm going to do, because I'm going to do some things to this model, is I'm going to save a version of it, and I'm going to save it, and I'm going to give it the same file name, but I'm going to call it, demo 200921 meters. And that's because I need to rescale it and change the units. And if I type units, so that instead of being in inches, it's in meters. Meters. And it's going to ask if I want to rescale it, and I do. I'm going to say yes. And you can see it shrinks it gets smaller, but that's just because basically Rhino works in units, and it doesn't really matter to Rhino what you think those units are. When something's like 5 by 5 in Rhino, it's 5 units by 5 units. But other software, or we as humans, care about whether that's 5 inches or 5 meters. So if I type distance, right, you can see it says that's now 9.14 meters, which I think is the same as, I think that's 20 feet. I think that's what I originally had it scaled as. You can see if I type rectangle and 0, 0, and just draw a rectangle that I've set it up so that my 0, 0 point is in the lower left-hand corner. That's something that, again, I really like to always have a project 0, and I like that project 0 to always be at 0, 0 in all of my software. It just makes moving back and forth among different softwares much, much, much easier. Good. The next thing I want to do is you can see that I've set up 3 layers, and one layer is I've called base, and it basically, if I turn off my objects layer there, I want a separate layer that has the part of the model that's kind of defines the ground to be on a separate layer. That's going to be important when we go to sort of bring everything into hubs. And then I've right now put everything else on a layer called objects, except for I have a little cylinder that's 22 inches in diameter and 6 feet tall, just to give me a sense of how big a person would be in this space, and that's on layer person. But I'm actually going to delete that because I don't want to import that cylinder. One thing is if you have a whole bunch of extra layers with nothing on them, if you type purge and hit the space bar, oops, it won't purge it because that's my active layer. But if I uncheck that, try that again, purge, right? It automatically deletes any layer, as long as it's not the active layer, that doesn't have any geometry on it. It's also a good time, I mean, this is not super critical, but any like rando geometry, like this random point, or I think, if I, so you can see there, I have like a leftover curve. You can just go ahead and delete that stuff. Here's another random point that I had from when I was modeling. You know, anything that's sort of extraneous geometry, you kind of want to get rid of. So let me hit save. The next thing that I just want to do is I just want to give things some basic colors. We're not really going to get into texture, and it's like I could care less about trying to give things realistic textures. But it would be nice, like since we're bringing this into this sort of 3D world, to at least be able to control the color of things. And the easiest way to do that is to give it a very basic material in Rhino. And the easiest way to give things a material is by layer. So here, let's just make my active layer the base layer and turn off my objects. Right? By default, objects in Rhino are going to get their material from the layer. And if you come over here and where it says material in the layers palette and click on it, it's all got this kind of basic plaster. Just keep that. And then maybe just change the color. I'm going to make it a kind of sort of a light gray. All right, and I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to kind of do the same thing for my objects here, but I'm going to give them maybe like a sort of like a pistachio green color. Say OK, right? And you can see it changes there. And if I go to a rendered view, right, I now have some of my objects. If I want, let's say, to have like two colors of objects, let's maybe make another layer and call it objects pink. And maybe like this one and that one, I'll move them from layer objects to layer objects pink. Let's just give the layer color, right? You can see they disappeared in my top view, and it's because the layer color is black. But if I set the layer color to be, I don't know, something else, right, we can see them there in wireframe. And again, I'm just going to go over here next to material, click on the little circle, and go over to color, and give them a kind of, I don't know, mauvey pink color. And that's it, right? It just gives it a little something, that'll be fun in Hubs. And I'm going to hit save, right? So now I have 3 layers. I have a base layer. I've got objects on 2 layers. I've given each one a kind of color by changing the material. If I type units, right, you can see that my units are in meters. This is basically the setup that you need for Thursday, and that's it. And then we'll walk through in the next video what we're going to do on Thursday, which is then how to take this, export it, and get it into Hubs. So I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to hit stop, and I'll be back in a second with the next half of the video.